In fact, we'll cover some of those points. Here is Dr. Evolution's tactics, all right? Here's some of the things that go on. Number one, there's always an answer. So don't worry about a comeback. Don't let it frustrate you, because people always have an answer. You always have an answer. Even when you know you're not right or you don't understand what's going on, you're still going to have an answer, right? Everybody's got an answer. So this is just human nature. If you don't know something, then lie. And that's going to go on too. And so Dr. Evolution will lie to you and make up things. Especially take advantage of the fact that you don't know everything, so he can make up something. You say, I wonder if that's true. I wonder what. You don't know.
Factcheck.com.
Yeah, that's right. You have to go check it. Misdirect the answer and change the topic, or you got someone who's bothering you, and then you move on. And then I said, well, I need to make sure everyone's getting their questions, so we move around, which changes the subject, and we're not honing in on just one topic. You're not going to be able to pin Dr. Evolution down, because he's going to go to the next person, and so on. You select different students, keep the topics going, avoid answering questions by giving a different answer. So when we get into the first law of thermodynamics and origins, I'm going to go back to evolution, that we're dealing with things that already exist and that change. And so this is irrelevant to be talking about how it all got here. You can dismiss questions as unimportant like that. It's irrelevant. Overwhelmed with vocabulary and verbiage until they forgot what we were talking about in the first place. And then you finish up and then you move on to the next answer. So, I mean, these sorts of things happen. So, here's how to think about it. There are three working definitions, and a couple of you tried to make this point. It's important in discussion to know this and to point this out. Of course, in a Dr. Evolution situation like this, you're not going to, we're training. But when you're talking to someone, it's important that you understand the usages of the words and point out to the person, the evolutionist that you're talking to, that, you know, we're not talking about just change. We're talking about the second definition or the third definition. When I was doing a lecture with Dr. Kramer, a zoologist who was in the audience, and she said, that's not evolution, that's not evolution. I said, Dr. Kramer, I already defined the terms. I acknowledge that evolution, Webster's dictionary says, simply means change. But we also know it also comes as a package referred to the general theory of evolution. That is what I'm talking about. That is what I stated at the beginning of the lecture. When I say evolution, I'm talking about the general theory of evolution. For her to insist was being dishonest. She irritated the students. That's when one student stood up and asked for a survey of hands in the audience. How many here have been taught evolution means such and such? And while she's shaking her head, no. I mean, she really made herself look foolish because of that, by resisting the fact that this is what evolution means. Look what Theodosius Dobzhansky wrote. Evolution comprises all the stages of the development of what?
The universe.
Exactly. You see, it's documented. It's in our literature what evolution has meant. You're not going to see that very often today, because there is a movement to redefine not only what evolution means, but what theory means. They're changing the definition of theory to mean fact. And so evolution, the theory of evolution, will be fact. This is word spinning. This is vocabulary, semantic warfare that's going on. So not only are they changing the meanings of words, they are censoring the information, like I was telling you about the law of biogenesis. So there's censorship, and then there's the reinvention or the redefining of words. So these things you just need to be aware of. We know that evolution refers to change that accumulates in a population over time. Evolution technically does not refer to change that occurs in you as an individual. It refers to change that is passed on from generation to the next generation. So we're really talking about mutation in a population, not an individual. That's how evolutionists think about evolution. Change is limited, not unlimited. That's really the real fact. And that's where you go to the laboratory evidence and someone was raising that point but was unable to follow through. The fact is that when we use Drosophila melanogaster, which is the key organism to demonstrate change, how much change can occur in organisms, evolutionists have failed. It's still Drosophila melanogaster. Now that's not going to phase them. It doesn't phase Dr. Evolution because, see, that's negative evidence. It just means we haven't produced it yet. It doesn't mean it won't be produced. All right, having said that, this is what is so important to understand. You'll never be able to kill evolution because of that point right there. You see, unlike the origin of the universe and origin of life where you have the laws that say it can't happen this way, there is no law that says speciation cannot happen. So when the evolutionist says, well, we just can't produce the evidence in the laboratory because we haven't had enough time to represent or simulate millions of years, that's absolutely correct. I mean, we don't know that it's right. What I mean is the argument is correct, not necessarily the statement, but we won't know if the statement is correct or not unless we have all knowledge, and we don't. So they will always have this back door because there is no way to falsify the unlimited potential for change. All we can say is, you haven't shown it yet. You see, so evolutionists will always have that back door. That's why you can't kill it. This is another insight. And let's see if that's, it's not the next slide. When creationists and evolutionists debate, a creationist always starts out with the origin of the universe, because you got the law of science on your side, the law of biogenesis on your side for origin of life, and then they argue the supernatural origin of species. The evolutionists will begin where? Species, and work backwards, because they have the mechanisms of mutation and natural selection, which are mechanisms for change, but not how much change. So that's their stronghold. But they don't have laws, and they have excuses to explain why they don't have the evidence, but nonetheless it's more than what they have for origin of life and universe. So once they establish this over here and show that mutation is a fact, natural selection is a fact, and there's no reason to think that there is limitation, is what they're going to say, then they progress back to life and then the origin of the universe. But having said that, they are redefining evolution to mean nothing more than descent with modification, and origin of life and origin of universe is irrelevant. Why? Because the laws stand against them. That's why. So they're going to work backwards, and they're going to focus on speciation. And in speciation, they don't have laws. They have evidence of change that takes place that is very real. But what they lack, and this is, I had a discussion with the president of the Atheist Association at a university, and I asked her, I said, if evolution is a fact, what is the actual evidence that there is unlimited potential for change in organisms? And she said, well, I'm going to my paleontology class in the next hour. I will ask my professor. So we exchanged phone numbers, and I said, okay, well, I want to hear this. And to this day, she has not texted me back. There is no answer. I already knew the answer. But she discovered it for herself when she asked her professor, probably, hopefully, still trying to find the answer. There is no evidence that organisms have unlimited potential for genetic change. It does not exist. And so, as I pointed out to her, you have an excuse for the absence of producing that evidence in the laboratory, but you don't have support that it can happen. So you've really got a theory based on assumption that it could happen, or an extrapolation that mechanisms of change over long periods of time are going to produce the changes you need. All right, this is about natural selection. It does occur. It's a circular reasoning. Evolutionists are saying themselves that really this is not a falsifiable event. They can provide explanations for why the wood frog did what it does, and why the spotted owl does what it does, and why the whales do what they do, and so on. But those are just explanations. Why do they have that behavior? Because they evolved that way. How do we know they evolved that way? Because they got that behavior. How do we know they have that behavior? Because they evolved. And see, it's just circular reasoning, and that's the problem with natural selection explanations. The fact about the geological column, it only exists in the textbooks. There's anomalies. I had mentioned Skull 1470 the other night. It's a classic example where you start out with with a rock that was dated 300 million years until they found fossils in the strata that couldn't have existed that long ago. So they redated with better samples of the same rock. 30 million years it matched the fossils until Richard Leakey found the human-like skull, which couldn't have existed 30 million years ago. So they went out and got yet more, better samples, and sure enough, it dropped down to under 2.6 million years. That shows you that they can calibrate the clocks to adjust to whatever fossils they find in the strata.
And like they do our budget.
What's that?
And like they do our national budget.
Yeah, absolutely.
Recalibrate it.
You can recalibrate it. All right, so here's what's important. Keep these arguments, keep these topics separated. It will serve you well. They all have their own questions, their own evidences. Don't blend them together. Dr. Evolution can scramble these up. So we're dealing with origin of the universe and origin of life, origin of species. We can keep it mixed up in a big group. Dr. Evolution just can't lose that way, and demonstrates why in the classroom you do want to raise your hand, ask questions, and let the professor respond. This is a diagram showing how creationists argue from their strong point, arguing from the origin of all things forward. Evolutionists are going to start out with speciation and work backwards, and that's why. All right, this is a summary of what we've talked about. Origin of the universe, first and second laws of thermodynamics. Polonium halos was simply Robert Gentry's work demonstrating that there had to be an instantaneous creation rather than a slow hardening of the Earth's crust. Origin of life has law of biogenesis, law of probabilities, and we didn't talk about laboratory results. And then origin of species, we have the laboratory evidence, fossil record, and law of probabilities. So that brings our meeting to a conclusion. Hopefully with the organization of material, you will know, as you do your own study, you'll know how to fit it all together, and that enables you then to grow in your knowledge and preparation of creation science. So it's really been a blessing to be here with you this week, and I really appreciate the opportunity.
For us too.
Thank you.